Hello, people. Welcome to another episode of The Other Side. Now, this is a Christian podcast that features guests who share about their different Christian life experiences and how God has been involved in their career. Now, today, we're joined by a special guest. She's a blogger. She's been doing a lot of blogging, social media blogging. Her name is Mwelwa. Mwelwa Mushibwe, you're welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, and thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Tell us about yourself, Mwelwa. Who's Mwelwa?
It's a bit hard because I do quite a few things, but I like to think that I'm an entrepreneur, so I do a lot on the probably literature element. So I do a lot of writing. I do some ghostwriting, so some of the content that some people read in Zambia content. I do a lot of editing for some writers, so maybe like the Christopher Katongo biography. That's some of the work that maybe I would have edited. Then I do a bit of the blogging as well, which I'm very known for, but it's such a small segment of my life. But yes, Then the blogging element as well. And yes, I'm an entrepreneur as well, so I do a couple of things, catering. I do some skills training as well, so yeah.
Okay,
I've
great.
been a bit of this and that.
Right. How did you start this whole media blogging? How did you get into it?
I would say I was like an accident. Maybe could I say I'm accidental? Well, you could say that I was an accidental blogger, maybe, because all I did before was I like writing, so I'll just write my thoughts, and then I then one time responded to, I'm trying to remember his name. He's called Reverend. I think he's Reverend Walter Mwambazi, and he had said something in lines with, I'm trying to remember here, but it was to do with us being very weary about CR1. This was just after the elections, and I think I did a live video where I was saying, look, that as a reverend, I'm trying to really understand you here. How do you then say we should be weary of CR1 now, when you should have said it maybe before even the elections, or the moment you noticed that he was evil and that kind of thing? And I was just castigating pastors on the fact that they'd been very relaxed. They had actually been in bed with the government of the day, and when they shouldn't have been, that kind of thing. So I think that's where maybe it took off for me.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Now, I must understand that you're a Christian.
Yes.
Of course, having featured on the Christian podcast. When did you get born again? How did you know God? Did someone preach to you? How was it like?
I went to church all my life. I think I was born in church. There's so many people that still come up to me and like, oh, I remember when you were a child and you would shout amen. Way after everyone has said amen, then I'm shouting amen. Yeah. So I went to church very early. My parents took me to church from birth. But becoming a Christian, I think I would say it's a challenge, is because I want to understand things and they need to make sense to me. It took me quite a while. And it was not until I think 2003 that I became a Christian. And this was, I had a Sunday school teacher, I would say that was not Sunday, so it was teen ministry. And this particular teacher, I must have given a hard time to explain what predestination meant. And I had to be satisfied with his answering. But it somehow it clicked on that particular day. I remember in 2003, and it made me realize that maybe even what I was really thinking about wasn't so much wasn't so important as me making sure that I was believing in God, and that I believed in him. I believed that he died on the cross and that he could save a human soul. And that element of predestination really played such a big role in helping me get convinced about what salvation really was.
Now, obviously, you're saying that you've grown up in church, meaning you used to go to church. There comes a time when someone discovers who God really is, the time they know God by themselves. When can you say you met God? At which point were you born again? Which year?
So I was born again in 2003.
2003.
Like I said, yes. After that Sunday school teen ministry lesson, and I do totally appreciate this man, and he's still alive, because he really labored to teach what predestination was to a group of teenagers who probably, some were not even asking questions, but for me it's just suddenly felt really heavy that I should understand what the predestination element meant, and that even when I was asking the questions, he was really patient enough to explain to me what predestination meant, why it was important that somebody had Jesus Christ and that they believed and that you met him as your personal savior. So for me, that's when I think I met Jesus Christ.
Okay, great. I've seen a ring in your hand, on your hand. I assume you're married.
I am married. I'm Mrs. Intanisha.
Oh, great.
So I'm Mrs. Intanisha, but the blogging name remains Mwelwa Mushibwe.
Okay, great. So how do you balance your career and your day-to-day life with Christianity and also playing a role as a wife? How do you balance everything for you?
I always find this question a little hilarious, I think, because I think I always say that marriage isn't an achievement. I know in Zambian cultural circles, the marriage thing is such a big deal. I know I'm very controversial about that, as a blogger, but it's not such a big thing that one has to balance. It's a progression of life. The same way I became of age, the same way I grew up, I got to a point where I'm now 18, I'm an adult. I feel that's what marriage is. It's just a progression in life. So it doesn't even feel like much change, apart from the fact that I've got somebody that I've taken on his name, that I'm bouncing off things off, getting permissions, which you never do get permission. Now you have to bounce off the other person, like, look, I need to do this. So I haven't found it such a big deal that I need to balance him because we're one, so it's part of my life. So I haven't necessarily had to balance that element. The career element, maybe at times, yes, I've had to really struggle to balance a few things, especially when you're running a company. I was living in the company, within the premise of the company, and yes, you have a life as well, and you have, like you're saying, maybe you also need to create the space for your husband.
Exactly.
But I think the balancing element is acceptance that this is the life that I'm living. This is how I wake up in the morning, so I need to do this and this. Schedules are also really good. I like working with a schedule. So there's that element that I know that this happens now, this happens, that there's a timetable set. Now less even, I don't have that tight schedule that I can even struggle with. I'm a little bit relaxed at the moment. There's not much going on. But I think with having a lot of businesses going, yes, there's sometimes a scheduling that needs to really happen.
Right. Okay, so what inspired you to be a blogger? There are a lot of social media bloggers out there who would want to learn one or two things from you. How have you achieved this? How did you discover, or what inspired you to get into blogging?
I think it's having a view, having an opinion, maybe, because maybe there's that element of having a view. And when you see the trajectory, I'll look at it in the Christian element. So I see a lot of people who parade as Christians, and they will say they are Christians, but I know for a fact they're not by what they're producing. So I'll give you an example. You have a papa telling you something like, oh, your last name is M, so because your last name is M, you're dying in the next couple of, that kind of, that's a whole lot of hogwash. And there was nobody in that space saying, look, this is not genuine, this is not in the Bible, this is not Christian. And so for me, that became a space maybe that I could speak, because not only was I just saying something that was my opinion, but I was stating facts, and I feel like I was saving people. Because I think in the Christian circles, I'll loosely say Christian, because I'll say religion, because we need to differentiate what Christianity is. Christianity is finding God, religion is searching for God. And so I believe that a lot of these things that they're all over Facebook, they are men, say amen, that those are people that are looking, so it's all religion. And I felt like a lot of people who are supposed to actually be credible are not credible in our spaces, and they're teaching us the wrong stuff. And in that space, I felt like I could probably state the fact and say, look at your Bible, this is not true. When your papa is telling you that run away from this person and run away from that person, that's not actually what Christianity is. Christianity isn't judgmental. At the moment, I know I'm very controversial on this element, because I keep insisting to say, look, homosexuality is not a death sentence by Christians, which is what a lot of us in the Christian circles are doing. We are saying that the homosexuals should die, but they are God's children as well. And the biggest commandment is that love one another, love somebody as you would love them to love yourself. And again, the Bible still says that love covers a multitude of sins. So why is it that we're failing to cover that multitude of? Why are we failing to show them the love? And when they see the genuine love, then they're going to see who Jesus Christ is. But we're not doing that, especially as the pastors. For example, they release a statement. This was the Churches Council of Zambia, and just to say we're not in support. Obviously, you're not in support, but what are you doing within your churches, within your spaces? So for me, it's in that space that I feel like I make a difference in stating and telling the pastors to say, you are my pastors, you have a right to do what is right by us, your congregants, you have a right to do right by what, the commandment that Jesus gave at the end, go into the world and make disciples. Your job isn't being in government, your job isn't making statements, your job isn't just making different churches left, right and centers or saying all these funny things, because we hear all these things by our, by the end of the year, you're going to receive an iPhone. Looking at this about prophetess, what is an iPhone at the end of the day, in salvation? Why should somebody say, I am who I am? I am the recent one I heard, which I laughed, was that I'm a demon bulldozer. I had a really good laugh about
Commander
that.
One.
Yes, all those things are besides the point. So for me, that's the space I think that I fit in, and I felt like this made a lot more sense. The other things that came on the political views, those are add-ons. I know that someone will call you a political analyst or social analyst. Those are kind of add-ons that came on afterwards, but I think that's the space that I felt I fell in, and it made a lot more sense. So that's how I would say I started the blogging thing.
Great. What makes you to stand out as a blogger? What makes you so different from other bloggers out there?
I've been told I'm savage, I'm violent. That's the one. I recently got the violence one during I think this was like a commemorative time for the UPND when they were sworn in. So I tend to think maybe that's why, but I equally think maybe I'm blunt. The other element is that I'm really blunt. I know that I'm blunt sometimes to the point that after I've said something is when I'm like, ooh, okay, did I say that as black and white? So maybe I'm a little different because I'm blunt.
Okay. I see that.
So maybe that I'm blunt, and I know a lot of people equally struggle with the element that I'm telling people facts that are probably sometimes not said. I know one gentleman once said, why would you tell off a pastor? I think you cannot be telling off a pastor. But you see, when somebody does the wrong things, it doesn't matter what age they are, especially if it's detrimental to people's souls. And I think that's the urgency that maybe we need to have. So maybe that's where I would say that's the unique
most people, they would say, when you're trying to correct them, they'll tell you, don't judge me, or don't tell me this and that. You can't condemn me. The Bible says don't judge, stuff like that. What's the difference between judging a person and correcting a person? What's the difference there? Because nowadays we see a lot of young people, even older people, whenever you point out a wrong, they'll tell you, say you're judging, and touch not my anointed one. Do them no harm. So how can you come out in a way that please God?
It's a fine line, and it's the intent, I think, behind what you're saying. When I'm saying things like, and I will use the Bible, this is the other, so I'll use the Bible and I say, you whitewash tombs, and I'm directing that at the pastor. I'm not judging them actually, but I'm asking them to consider what they are doing and to probably understand the weight or the results of what they do. So there's that element. However, I also tend to think that our culture is very toxic in the correcting element. When we are growing up, a lot of us grew up in homes where you are not taught in love. You're not corrected in love. So it's so, And so even now in Christian circles, when we are supposed to probably find ways and means of doing things in love, it's a struggle in the way that we come across. So it's a fine line, and you've got to be really careful how you come across or how you even correct another person. When you correct somebody in love, sometimes it doesn't even feel like you're correcting in love. But I'll tell you this as well. There are elements that I've said certain things. I'll give an example of where I'm telling pastors something. I would have had to really, really listen from God that indeed He has told me to say it. Because if I said it probably in my own strength, I might not come out as intelligent as I sound. So I've had to really rely on the Holy Spirit. And I've really had to ask God that, should I really say what I'm saying? And sometimes I don't even come across when I'm doing the blog or everything. But there's been a struggle beforehand where I felt very clearly that God said, go and say this. And I'm like, there's no way, come on, there's so many people going to hear me. Facebook is, I'm like, no. And then eventually I get to a point where I'm like, okay, let me just say it. So there's equally that balance where I'll say things, And for me, I don't even feel like I said anything bad or I castigated anyone. It's afterwards when people say, "No, you can't tell off a person," blah blah blah. And then I'm having to think, okay, I apologize, but there's that fine line that you really need to check yourself that you're not judging, because it's very easy to judge.
It's very easy.
It's very easy to judge and not be corrective in love. And then again, you've got to really listen from God, because I think that's the crux of Christianity, is listening to what God is telling you.
You've mentioned something about homosexuals. I think it's currently the topic that is trending in the country as we are speaking right now. So by calling homosexuals, isn't that judging in itself?
That's a label.
It's a label.
Now, at the moment, with the homosexual element worldwide, or I would say the European American circles, there's a struggle on what names we can call this group of people. Right? There's a controversy at the moment on pronouns. There are some really good thinkers out there who even believe they shouldn't be these pronouns. But these are words that we have clothed people. They're descriptive in nature. They're not judgmental. So if you do not have sex between a man and a woman, your type of sex is different. It has to be labeled something. So when it's called lesbian or gay or homosexual, it's not a judgmental clock or a term. It's a description of what you do. Now, again, it's not us who made these names. It's themselves who say, I am this. And they're themselves who say, call me ours, call me there, call me. And I think there's a whole lot of rubbish, but that's them. So it's not a judgmental clock. It's them who want to be known as such. So I don't think that is a judgmental element. The judgmental element, I think, comes in when, and this is the unfortunate thing about life, is when they insist that this is who we are. Okay, and then there's another group that says, no, that's not who you are. You have picked up this lifestyle and now you want to be identified as such. That's where the challenge comes in. So I'll give you an example. I love reading, but I don't go about saying I'm a reader. You get me? I am Mwelwa Mushibwe. I am the human being. I have a father and a mother who created me, and I fall under this tribe and I fall under that tribe. Now, when people want to force an identity on you, this is where the problem of sin is. You want to justify the sin. So you'll come up with these terminologies and say, I am homosexual, I am chakuti. So we have no option but take you as what you have said. And that's where that terminology comes in. Okay,
all right. Now, a lot of people, like young people in our generation, they struggle to publicly identify themselves, In that you find, yes, we are Christians, but we struggle with so much things to the point where sometimes we live a life of pretense. So, what advice can you give to someone who's struggling with something they've been going through secretly as a Christian, and how to overcome certain things as you have as a Christian?
I think this is the other fallacy, I'll say fallacy, that our Christian circles have planted in us as young Christians is the idea that you are supposed to be perfect because you're Christian. Now, Paul labors in the epistles to say, look, your body is dying. He also labors to describe what your sinful nature is. So what you know you're not supposed to do, what you know you should be doing, you won't even do it sometimes. It's like, I'll give you an example where okay, I need to read my Bible. Then you think, then in the morning, life begins and you haven't read your Bible. It's those struggles. Christian life isn't an easy thing. I think we've been really fooled by a lot of these papas and all sorts, and this is because we're not reading our own Bibles. We've relied on them to interpret the Bible, and now they have such a hold on our lives that they tell us that you're supposed to be perfect. They tell us that we're supposed to be living these what do you call that? I'm trying to remember what the type of life they say. Like it's a soft life. Christianity is a soft life,
easy life.
But it's not. Christianity is a hard life. It's a life full of realities. I mean, the Bible begins with perfection, right? And then it teaches you, like in the Garden of Eden, there was so and so and so. But the reality of life is you cannot have utopias. Why you cannot have utopias is there's so much going on. That's why it's so possible that a snake can come in and you're like, oh, looks nice. And the snake goes, oh, try an apple.
Yeah.
So it's not about, I was told not to try the apple. Goes, come on, try the apple. Then you're going to see everything. You see, so you try the fruit, and that is life. It's that struggle. You're constantly fighting with something within you. The next story, I think, in the Bible, we're talking about Cain and Abel. And it's a struggle. There's nothing wrong that the brother did. Literally nothing. He just had a better gift. You would have expected him to go and say, all right, God, if my brother gave you a better gift, how do I give you a better gift next time?
Yeah.
But he doesn't. He goes and commits the ultimate sin. He kills his brother. That should just tell you that life isn't easy, and Christianity, especially the Christian life, isn't an easy life. And you're constantly battling with yourself. The trick is to remain grounded in the word, because the word begins to condemn you, it begins to correct you, it begins to judge you. Whether you like it or not, you will be judged, because those are your actions. Yeah. So you need to really hone in on the Bible. And as a youth, I keep insisting that you need to read Proverbs. Proverbs is just so rich in a lot of logic, in a lot of common sense, that it describes life in a way that you really need to look at it and think, oh, so this is what life is about. For the young man, I think it's even more important. Ecclesiastes, the follow-up books, are also really good by the same writer, which is King Solomon, because you begin to learn that just because something is within your reach doesn't mean you need to have it, which is what we're really struggling with as youth at the moment. We have so much access to a lot of things that maybe even our parents didn't have. We have access to money depending on the country you live in. You have access to information readily available on social media. You can tap into any information under the sun, and if you don't, it is still put into your head over and over again. So it's that element that you're having to constantly keep yourself grounded by making sure you read the Bible.
Wow.
I think a pastor is besides the point sometimes, because depending on where you go to and what you're being taught, doctrines begin to vary, but the fact remains in the Bible. So you've got to really hold on to what the Bible says.
Okay, great. So what do you think is the role of young people in this present day generation? Because a lot of young people, Christians in particular, they struggle with what to do, what they've been called to do. As young people, what's our role in this present generation?
Our role, I feel, as a young person in Christianity, is the ultimate, especially in the type of times we are in, is that we need to spread the gospel. Despite what you're doing, despite how you look, because allowables have changed. In previous generations, I wouldn't be sat with my legs this way. Okay. Yeah. Now it's the fashion. What am I going to buy if I go into the shop? That's what's in the stores. I wouldn't be able to have tattoos. I wouldn't be able to have piercings. The idea is that Christianity is something so personal, and somebody should meet Christ, and you should be able to tell somebody, look, I met Christ, and this is what he has done for me, or this is as a result of what he did for me. This is how my life has changed. This is how I view life. The ones needing so much help, I even tend to think at the moment, are the boys, because we've concentrated so much on the girls. The girls are so empowered with information. They're able to go to schools. They're so closeted, depending on our culture. Our culture really cuddles girls. You find the girl doesn't leave home until I don't know how old. The guy is out there, and the girl, necessarily, you don't even need the girl to work. Your husband, it's that thing. So the people who really even need God's guidance are the men, are the young men. And that's where I think our place as young people in Christianity is for salvation. We really need to go all out, preaching the gospel, preaching the actual salvation. Try and really remove all the doctrines. It doesn't matter what church you come from, because I think that's what even blinds us a lot. We're in competition within interchurch, when actually we should actually just be really focused on the salvation element of things.
Okay, great. Would have loved to talk more on that, but we'll keep it for the other time. Okay. Well, let's focus now on your blogging. Like, how do you come up with content? How do you create content?
I was a little lucky. I was lucky, and I think I'll say blessed, maybe the term blessed, that I got invited on a portal. That is, I know that a lot of people refer to me like Vakwetu, but I'm actually not Vakwetu. I'm not even the owner of the Vakwetu thing. Oh yeah. It's owned by somebody called Dr. Musha, and he invited me to join. Dr. Elias Musha. Yes. Okay. So he invited me to join this blog space that he had created called Vakwetu TV, or TV Vakwetu. And so then I was asked to create content, and I had to figure out what content I could have. So I chose two elements that probably the Zambian audience is interested in. So at the moment, the Zambian audience is interested in the politics and social. So there's a lot of things going on in the social spaces. So some of the content that I would then do is social content. I would interview people like the Mwizukanjis, the Z Farmer, and then I'll do a little bit of the more political serious elements and interview some ministers or political figures. So that's the type of content then that I would have. On my personal page, then I'm able to say...
What are some of the prominent names that you've interviewed in the political sphere?
In the political sphere, the Hamududus. I'm trying to remember off my head now here. I'm trying to Siawan. Does Siawan for political or social? Yeah, okay, but
or religious.
Actually, it was political. It was a political interview, so I'll say Siawan as well. Yes.
Okay.
The duo Frank and Mr. Miandalite, you know, the two Fimba Upoke guys.
Oh yeah.
Yes, so they're some of the people.
The praise singers.
The praise singers. Yes. I've equally interviewed people like Minister of, I think, is it Trade and that's Mr. Chipoka, Minister. They call them Honorable, so Honorable Chipoka.
Yeah.
So those are a couple of the people that I've interviewed.
Okay. What are some of the frustrating things that you've encountered being a blogger, or the hardships, challenges that you've encountered being a blogger?
I would say perceptions. Perceptions are very hard. That even within the group, sometimes I would interview somebody and the group doesn't. Maybe the other people within the group are not for the idea. So I once interviewed MP for, is it Chiengi? She's Mrs. I think she must be Mrs. Mwelwa or Mrs. Mwelwa. And unfortunately, I did not realize that she had maybe an issue with one of my other panelists. So some of the other panelists come on and she goes, "Oh, I don't want to be interviewed," and she goes off. Oh. So there are those
kind of things.
There's those kind of things where you don't know some of the issues going on in the background. So when you bring a person to, and then there's that. Some of the other elements are just probably maybe internet issues, because when somebody comes online and they don't have good internet, so you're having to really work out how to interview them. Sometimes also it's a Zambian timing. We're so stuck with Zambian timing. So people come in and they're really late, or they show up at a time when you're actually even thinking you're about to stop. So there are those but I think the biggest is the perception element, where you interview somebody, and you can even tell sometimes even the people who are watching in begin to say, guys, I'm watching interviews Ben Lombe. So and you're actually interviewing, and you can see these comments. So in your head you're like, okay.
The social media space in Zambia currently is very much open, and people say anything, whatever comes to their mind, they will comment. Obviously, as certain people will be watching this video, there'll be a lot of comments, So, being a blogger, where do you see yourself? Do you see yourself continuing with blogging, or maybe at a certain point you think, okay, I'll just stop? Do you do it just like a part-time thing?
Yes, it's very part-time.
It's part-time.
It's a very small part of my life, which is very loud. I find very loud. Okay. And then it's one of those things where I even forget some of the things I said. Yeah. And then when I go out and everyone is like either pointing and someone comes up, you can have a photo, you can have a picture. Then you're like, oh, okay. It's a bit of a small part. It's a hobby. I would say it's a hobby. I haven't even thought about where it's going to take me, to be honest, because for me, I've taken it as a hobby. It's something that I just like doing.
Do you do any other thing apart from blogging? Like, at the start of the interview, I heard you mention some of the other things that you do. Yeah. Like, I would want you to say some of the few things that you do apart from blogging.
Yeah, so apart from blogging, I'm sure other people have seen me or heard me on radio stations. So yes, I do a program on and off with Mwelwa Mushibwe. It's called Real Life. So it's a bit of an advice base. I do skills teaching. So I run a skills school where you teach your baking, cooking, that kind of thing. Then the editing element as well, so a bit of the writing as well. So I edit some people's books. So if you're writing and you want your ideas or you just want a bit of advice, I tend to find that I'm editing a lot of academic work. Okay. So again, I do a lot of that academic kind of editing. Okay. So you'll find that I spend a lot of my time on my laptop editing people's work or ghostwriting people's work.
Okay. Great.
That is more on the heavy element of what I do.
Okay, great. Having interviewed prominent people like, of course, Mwizo Kanji, Ben Lombe, and all these other public figures, how does it make you feel? Is there a certain kind of way you feel after interviewing them? Do you wish to go higher one day, interview the president?
I think I'm a little lucky on the element that I have people around me that ground me. Mm-hmm. So sometimes, to be honest, I don't realize how big I've done. Mm-hmm. Or let's say if I interviewed somebody, mm-hmm. and then afterwards goes, "Oh wow, you were interviewing Siawan," and I'm thinking, should I be excited?
Yeah.
So I really credit my parents that they've really kept me grounded. Mm-hmm. That sometimes I don't even realize that it's that mm-hmm. big of a deal, because in my head I'm just thinking I just did something that I like doing.
Yeah.
Would I like to do more? Maybe formalize it. Maybe when I have more time. Mm-hmm. I tend to think that maybe I would like to just maybe have something like a journalistic academic qualification that then, in those terms, maybe. Interview agent, that would be a good experience as well. Mm-hmm. I know I laughed at the Hot FM interviewees when they interviewed him. Okay. But it was because some of the, where you have some of those elements, but I don't think I would necessarily do better, maybe be a bit more prepared. Mm-hmm. And then as social media analysts, we tend to say things and then when you think about would I do better, Mel? Keep quiet. So there's that element. Yeah. So yes, I think I would like to have a lot more people that I can interview that maybe not necessarily are more famous, but that they give me more meat, because I think I get something from these interviews. I get to know or have a little glimpse into the person's life and understand them a bit more. So for me, that becomes the basis. So even when I'm choosing somebody I want to interview, there's a bit of a thought process like, okay, what do I want to know? So when I go to this minister, why do I want to interview him? Well, maybe he's doing really well and he's maybe very public, and the other ministers are a bit more subtle about their work. So why is he so out there?
Yeah.
So I have that idea as well. And then some of the content that I have is maybe I'm interviewing youth. So I interviewed people like the Diamond presenter, Mr. Wuyoya. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for him, I was specifically interviewing him because he's a youth and it was about the youth day. Yeah. So I want to just get to know, why is he unique? Why is it that his kind of presenting was really unique? So there's a bit of a target when I'm interviewing these people.
Okay. Being a blogger and a Christian, sometimes there can be some conflict,
yes.
in that there are certain people who think the Christian is not supposed to actively involve themselves in politics. What's your say on that?
I think as Christians we should have a say in politics. Mm-hmm. The problem comes in when you are a religious leader. That is where I think the conflict would then arise. So I'm very categorical and I actually tell pastors they shouldn't be in government, or they shouldn't have a view on politics. Mm-hmm. They should probably concentrate on the salvation element, because the moment they put or align themselves politically, it now means that they have sort of saw themselves. If that politician isn't particularly great, I'll give you an example of the last government. We had a Ministry of Religious Affairs. The government was so bad, they were so repressive, we borrowed heavily, there were all these elements. Now, there were, I beg your pardon, all these pastors who were with this government, they would go for the prayers and stuff like that. Now, they were so in with that political space that they couldn't even tell them, like, look, you're in the wrong. We had so many gyms and jacks saying, oh, you're going to get into government, you're getting a third term, and then it doesn't happen. So now they look stupid. In fact, they make even us, the followers, look stupid. So that's where I normally say that we need to be really careful. For the others who are not religious leaders, I feel that you should speak up. If you have you have nothing to lose. Your reputation, you might mar your reputation, but it's not like you're a pastor. So that's where I find that like a fine element. And it is true that when I interview certain people, there is some conflict when you interview, especially for a particular, maybe a lifestyle. One of the things I keep insisting is that, look, as a Christian, you shouldn't be so detached from reality. You are in the world, but not of the world. You're in two places, like your food. Now, the trick is in what context are you doing what you're doing? Are you joining the world? Or are you trying to get the world to see a bit of what Christianity looks like? So people will never understand why I will side with Ben. But I want Ben to see what God looks like. And God doesn't look like the people that insult him. God is not somebody that judges you to a point that they want to kill you. That's not who God is. There was a dispensation in the Old Testament where he'll just literally, like, you're sinning, boom, kill you. But that's not who God is. There's a level of grace that God gave us. And if he could forward it to me, who's literally rotten, why could I not hand it equally to a person like Ben Lombe? And I don't think, and this is where I know there's a struggle, especially when people were seeing you interviewing, like, this place belongs to this blog, the name and everything belongs to the pastor. How has he allowed this to be on his,
Yeah.
And that's where I'm looking at people and thinking, my friends, we are in the world but not of the world. The fact that so it's okay, you can go to his salon and he can do your hair, but you do not want him in your spaces. And who tells you he's not a Christian? How do you know if he is, or how do you know if he's not a Christian? There are all those things. So there's a whole element of being in the world and out of the world is a very tight one. But I'm very particular on the leadership, that if you're a religious leader, I don't think you should be aligned to a political party. You become very compromised. You lose your credibility. Here we are today. I think I'm trying to remember the name. I think must be Pastor Sunday Sinyango. My husband loves him. My husband will tell me this man taught lessons that helped me shape who the man I am today. He was able to teach us about women. He was able to teach us about life. He was able to teach us about life. But my idea of Pastor Sunday Sinyango is when he says, HH is not going to rise on the throne. And in my eyes, I'm like, what throne? This is the president. The president doesn't have a throne. You get me? So now that you will not, this man as HH, you will not get into government and blah, blah. Well, HH got into government. So for me, I completely just disregard that. For me, I just think maybe in one circle, you see. Yeah. But it's that fine line. Whereas if it was coming off from me, who is not a religious leader, and I say, who's going to castigate me now? No one. Yeah. So I think that's where that's my kind of view.
Oh, great. So, Mwelwa, so what do you enjoy the most about blogging?
I think I think this is something that I've read some, I can't remember, but at the bottom of everyone's the bottom of everyone's thoughts or processes, there's that element of wanting to be heard.
Yeah.
So maybe it satisfies that. Maybe that's why I enjoy it. But I think the other element is being helpful and being heard, being of help to people, saying something that probably helps somebody or allows another person to think in a different way. Because I think we grew up very directed. They just tell us, go to school. Why am I going to school? No, there's never that why are you going to school? And even when you say, right, where is it going to take me? Well, now the parent, so so those are some of the other things that I liked, and then it also gives me an outlet for my thoughts, I think, because I'm always kind of thinking, and maybe that's an outlet for me. So I think those are some of the things that I enjoy about it. But also conversing with other people and hearing what others have to say about an idea, because there's never just one side of anything. There are multiple sides. So that becomes quite enjoyable as well. Okay,
great. Lastly, of course, putting yourself in the public space, being a blogger means that you're subjected to public scrutiny. And people throw shade, they fire shots. People criticize people. How do you handle criticism that comes from the general public being a blogger?
I think there's some things that bother me because I'm a human being, but then I've also equally had to learn one cardinal. I come from a family that's very opinion on the basis that we've been allowed to think, we've been allowed to ask questions. So where maybe in other homes you might not have been able to ask certain questions, we were able to ask certain questions. And we were equally able to grow up in an environment where somebody was able to tell you off. And I remember doing this, maybe I didn't even realize what I was doing, but I remember one time somebody saying, oh, it's time for the rest of you to start calling Mwelwa Mwelwa. And in my head I'm like, no, Because that creates a boundary. Because then they can't tell me if I do anything wrong, and I can't tell them. Well, so they'll just be taking my word. They won't be taking. I won't be able to take their word. But because of that non-existence of those boundaries, whether they call me back or they don't call me back, they know that I'm older than them. So they don't necessarily need to, create that boundary. And that created an environment where my younger siblings were able to tell me, like, there you haven't dressed up right. So after today, I walk up into my sister's room and I'm like, okay, what do you think? Because she's been able to critique me and I was able to swallow it. And I think because of that, now, when I come onto social media, a lot of people that say some of the things, they don't mean anything to me.
Yeah.
So if you mean something to me, let's say like you're my husband or my mother, and you say something and you criticize me, it's going to have weight. Now the rest, so I'm just like, it happened. And sometimes I'll be actually responding to somebody with criticism and actually having a laugh, which people don't realize that I'm laughing behind this because I know I have a sick sense of humor. So I might say something and people really take me to heart, and I'm going churchy with people and I'm laughing back and forth. But ideally, what I've just learned is that criticism isn't as bad as we tend to think it is. It's actually building, and it begins to fine tune you. It begins to hone you. I've had moments where maybe I might be on the Rakwet to Porto and I'm interviewing somebody, and somebody on the back just takes me like, sit up straight. That's just the thing, sit up straight. So you sit up straight.
Yeah.
Smile a bit more. So you smile a bit more, and you begin to appreciate this is criticism, but it's being done to build you, kind of thing, and it matters because that person that is doing that maybe means something to you. So it's a game of sieving. To an extent, I actually switch off. I'm very good at switching off, so I think that also helps me. That I'm not gonna okay, I talk to you and then it's gonna be in my mind the whole day or something. So I have to just So maybe I'm a bit lucky with that I have that kind of misula thing, which I've realized other people don't have. So yes, there's that struggle.
Okay,
but
great.
I think criticism grows you. So take it, but take it from the people that mean something to you. Yeah.
Okay, great. Now finally, we usually have a small Bible quiz at the end of the show. I know it's by surprise. You're not aware of this.
I'm gonna laugh at this one because I'm hopeless at numbers. So you're not going to get which book, which chapter, which
we're trying to test your Bible knowledge and to see how good you are. Not to embarrass you, but just to test your knowledge. Question number 1. Are you ready?
It's gonna be funny.
Are you ready?
I'm not ready. I'm not too.
Just 5 questions.
Angel, you never told me. Boom.
Okay, all right. Question number 1. Okay, who was the father to David? King David.
He had a nice name. Oh my goodness. How
Time
have I forgotten this?
Pass.
You put me on this spot. I'm going to remember this afterwards. That's a tragedy. Pass.
Okay, all right. Okay, question number 2. How many plagues did God send to the Egyptians, to Pharaoh and the Egyptians to let the Israelites go?
You guys are not fair. 12, 7?
No.
Oh
Last chance.
Goodness.
Final chance.
Oh my goodness. How many plagues?
Final chance.
This is horrible.
Yeah.
You're joking.
Okay.
Next question.
Next question. Okay, she got it wrong. The answer is 10. God sent
10 plagues.
10 plagues
to
the Egyptians and Pharaoh. Okay, all right. The next question. I think this one is easy. You get it. On which mountain did Moses receive the 10 commandments? Okay, correct. This one was easy. All right. Which verse says, and which book is it found? The verse which says that be ye not conformed, but be transformed through the renewing of
the spirit.
Mind. All right.
No, I know that. That's my problem. So I will know the verse. I do not know. Oh, God. I know it's epistles. That's Paul wrote that. That's as far as I can go by knowledge.
Try the book. Which book? Which book?
The Corinthians?
No. Last try.
Acts?
No, it's in the book. Which book? Can you try? The book of Romans.
Aye, man.
Romans chapter 12 and verses 2. Okay, all right.
You guys are not fair. You guys are not fair.
All right, okay. Okay, maybe we can keep it simple now. The final one. What was Jesus' occupation before he ascended to ministry? The carpenter. Okay,
those
all right.
Are the simple ones.
Okay, it was easy. All right, finally we've come to the end of the show. Mwelwa, thank you for giving us your time and also accepting our invitation to this show.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having me.
All right.
And for embarrassing at the end.
Right. We've come to the end of the show. On behalf of my crew, remember to look out for next episode soon again on this same space. Remember to keep it Jesus. On behalf of my crew again, goodbye. Keep it Jesus.
Trata-se de